forecast with your most accurate local meteorologists.
Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Brett Thacker joined by
Dan Tomaso. Great to see you, Brett. We're back here at the DNC, the Digital Now Center, live here today. We haven't done a live one with you here in a while.
No, we haven't, but it is great to be with all of you. If you're streaming us, thanks for doing that. We wanted to chat about the latest with Ian. Ian downgraded to a tropical storm.
Indeed.
Really wrecking havoc across Florida. And I think that one of the things that we have discussed privately is that I wonder if this will be on par with Hurricane Andrew. It certainly looks like it. This storm was massive. The eye wall of this thing was spectacularly large, Dan, as it made landfall. And so not only did it affect the western part of Florida, which is rare, a kind of a landfall on that side of the coast, but also then it just tore up central Florida and is now getting set to move back into the Atlantic as a tropical storm, taking aim at South Carolina tonight and tomorrow. So it certainly was a beast of a storm. We saw the videos. You've probably seen the storm surge videos, houses floating away, cars floating away. Just really massive devastation.
Well, and I was going to say, Brett, that unfortunately probably the worst case scenario played out with this storm, that it went through an eye wall replacement cycle 24 hours ago before it hit land. And what that allowed to happen was a widening of the eye. And a lot of the hurricane folks have compared this to Charlie, which hit in 2004 in the same exact area of Florida, but the eye was much smaller, and then the damage, because of the smaller eye on shore, was more like tornadic damage. It wasn't very large, but this was at least double, if not triple, the size of the eye of Charlie. What does that mean in practical terms? That means the wind field of the strongest winds was a lot wider, so it could affect a bigger area. Unfortunately, it hit a high population area.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we're talking about some truly, almost coastline changing wind that occurred and storm surge. So they are going to have a lot to clean up. But the question now for central Pennsylvania is what is it going to do here for the weekend? We've got some, kind of bad news if you wanted to get outside this weekend, but some good news, too, that this storm is not going to be devastating for us.
It's beautiful outside right now.
Yeah, it's a great fall day. We've got some, once again, kind of these self-destructing cumulus clouds.
It started clear.
They pop up with a little bit of heat, some instability. We don't expect any rain, though. It's just a nice sky there over the river. Where else are we going to go here? How about the Pine Street Elementary School? Again, blue sky, fair weather clouds. This is perfect September weather.
Very dry air. So at night, it's been in the 40s. During the day, we warm up to the 60s. We're actually a little bit cool for this time of the year.
We are, and a little breezy, too. That is not going anywhere. I mean, look at this. Here we sit just before noontime on a Thursday, and temperatures for most of us not in the 60s yet. So it's cool. We did dip into the upper 40s. There was a slight breeze this morning, and that breeze is still with us. And I want to make note here that I think one of the biggest things or the biggest factors in our forecast really starting today that isn't going to really let up until early next week, not so much the rain, the wind.
Yeah, I think the wind is going to be a factor. And again, this is typical of fall, but when you're getting such a strong area of low pressure to the south and really high pressure trying to wedge in from the north, that difference, we call it in nerd terms, a pressure gradient. So low, high, and they're kind of battling each other. That creates wind.
We're going to show you that on the surface map in just a second. But the other issue with the wind is you've got clockwise flow around the high to the north.
Indeed.
That's drawing in moisture from the Atlantic. Then you've got Ian's low, counterclockwise flow. So guess what? They're meeting in the middle. Guess who's in the middle? We are. We're going to get strong fetch, we call it, from the Atlantic, and that's going to keep clouds and moisture around here into early next week. And I think a persistent, chilly east breeze.
When I think of fall, I hate to say it, I think of dampness. I think of kind of days where it's overcast and just that it almost gets into your bones, that damp air,
soup
if you
weather.
will. Yes, it's soup weather indeed. Gumbo.
Yeah, I will say. So what we have now, we actually have some clouds coming off the lakes thanks to this north.
It's been really 3 days of this
flow. Yeah, the upper level low is finally lifted out of here, so there's no showers with this. High pressure is trying to move in, but you'll see because of that clockwise flow, it's pulling in some moisture off the lakes. We're getting some, as we mentioned, those self-destruct clouds. They're going to go away again tonight, although clouds from the south. So, Dan, explain this, and I tried to this morning. The surface map says it best. There is a battle shaping up with dry air to the north and then moisture to the south from Ian.
Well, and the biggest problem with all this is we're going to be right in the middle.
Yeah.
Central PA is going to be right in the middle of this. So
that's actually making a tough forecast.
It's making a very tough forecast. And again, the question is, does the dry air hold on long enough to really battle the moisture coming in from the south? Ultimately, I think it's more of a balance that some of the dry air wins, but at the same time, some of that moisture works up from the south. So again, when you have such a strong area of high pressure over us currently, this strong deepening low with what's going to be left of Ian, the battleground in between, it's called a pressure gradient. Lower the pressure, the more wind that surrounds that area of low pressure, and even high pressure too. I'm seeing it right now. I'm seeing the trees moving around outside here in our parking lot.
Right.
Again, even under a strong high pressure, you can get wind coming
Absolutely.
through.
And so now we're going to be in that battle zone. So the first thing to talk about is temperatures, because they are not going to warm up. We do expect mid to upper 60s here today, which is nice. And then as we fall into the nighttime hours, I think we're going to be back in the 40s again. But the clouds are going to increase tonight. And then tomorrow's going to be mostly cloudy, so we're not going to see the sun. And therefore, as we push into the afternoon, temperatures are going to struggle to warm up.
Wow.
Much
look
past
at that.
the low 60s. And by the way, I think we're going to be in the 50s then for Saturday as the rain starts to develop. But let's talk about this, Dan. This is exactly what you mentioned. The winds may back off slightly tonight, but starting tomorrow, I think a persistent east wind of, what do you think, 10 to 20 miles an hour?
Easily. And again, some of these gusts will be stronger. This is
yeah.
just the average wind.
Yep.
Gusts, remember, are more instantaneous, so it's not included here in the numbers. So we're talking about gusts upwards of 30
think
miles
30
per
miles
hour.
an hour. And I did tweet out some of our high-res model guidance suggests gusts near 30 miles an hour, even through Sunday.
Yeah, and I live in an area that's kind of prone to power outages. It may not take very much if we have hours and hours of this. That's some folks, you may either see a quick power outage or something wrong with the lines, tree damage, that sort of thing.
But I do want to mention about that. We're not talking about major wind.
No. But if you're in an area that you're
Correct.
surrounded by trees, I live in an area that has a ton of trees near the power lines. Always a problem.
If we get heavy enough rain Friday night and then all of a sudden a gust of 35 or 40 comes through, sure.
Yeah.
But don't worry about widespread power outage. This is not going to be a major storm for
No.
us. But to Dan's point, I mean, this is a weather event. Let's put it that way.
It is. And unfortunately for Florida, they're getting the more historic part of this storm,
Yeah.
the more devastating part of this storm. But it's still something to reckon with here. Again, this is the time of the year where systems get stronger because there's more of a temperature difference across the nation. And so as that moist, humid air lifts up from the south, trying to battle this cool, dry air, there's always a problem spot. And again, it's south of us this time, but we're still on the outer edges of it.
We're monitoring. So I think we could even see some thin cirrus clouds. The model certainly suggests that tonight, because that's going to be the outer bands of Ian moving in. Clouds increase tomorrow. I think a mainly cloudy Friday on the way. And then even as early as tomorrow evening.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see some showers during, unfortunately, some of the Friday night football games.
It'll be the first time that we really see this.
And here's where I want to emphasize, and this is the kind of the screaming message here. Friday night into Saturday morning, there could be some steady, heavy rain. That's going to be the worst of the storm, just in terms of rainfall. The problem then becomes there's going to be one area of moisture that pushes to the north and east, and then the actual low that was once Ian, that's going to sit and spin across the Carolinas for days. We're going to be on the northern edge of it. So what does that mean? It means breezy, cloudy, drizzly, occasional showers. It's not going to be raining all weekend.
No, it will not be raining all weekend. However, again, think damp, think overcast. Now, this is pretty healthy here, I will admit, this forecast model.
I think, and this is our in-house model, the graph, it's called. I like the idea of it, meaning that areas to the south and east are going to get the most rain. If you'll notice, places like Chambersburg, Mifflin, Templeton, they're going to get lesser amounts. I do think maybe going toward 2 inches is a little high.
I think it's a little high, too.
We're going to show you another model coming up that I think actually does a better job with it.
Okay.
So, Dan, break down the latest here with the tropical update from the National Hurricane Center. This is the latest. Guess what? It's re-strengthened a bit.
And it's not surprising. So we knew, obviously, the storm would be weakened by going over land. Unfortunately, Florida took the brunt of that. However, it's back over moist, humid air.
And hot water.
And hot water. And again, you may think about this in a simple way. Think about boiling water on a stove, right? As you get that water hotter and hotter, it becomes easier to lift up and create those bubbles inside. It's called convection. And so
there's a lot of it.
We're actually seeing a lot of convection right now, and the perfect ingredients on a very shallow, warm continental shelf here across eastern Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. And the concern is it'll likely strengthen back to Category 1 status before it makes its second landfall. So even though it's out over water now, it's going to turn more north and northwest over the next 24 to 48 hours.
Winds had weakened down to 65 miles per hour, and that's why I say as of the 11 a.m. update, it's back to 70. And the concern then would be, I think the they do have it re-strengthening to a Category 1 storm.
Makes sense.
As it starts to push into Charleston. They're worried in Charleston and other places in South Carolina. They're going to get some pretty decent storm surge out
Indeed.
of this. So that is something to
Pretty
watch.
slow moving until it gets to that point, which could enhance some of that surge.
Correct. And then it's going to kind of cut off and sit and spin across Kentucky, Virginia, Carolina, in that area. So it's going to that's where the moisture is going to be through about next Tuesday. But it's going to be to our south. But watch what happens here, Dana. It's reminiscent of a winter storm.
Absolutely.
It comes up the coast.
Yep.
The actual low, watch what it does. This is Saturday. It's going to split. Now, the area.
So what we're talking about right here, here's the original low circled.
That's Ian.
Right, that's Ian. But similar to a winter storm, we get this secondary development. So I'm going to change my color here.
Yep.
Bear with me for a second. I'm using a touchpad here, trying to make this work.
But I think too, as you're doing that, that area that's pushing into New York there by Saturday night,
Yep.
that's the area that's going to give us some heavy rain tomorrow night and Saturday morning. Yeah, right.
So there's the
new
secondary low, and then this will pass this way. So
Yep.
one original area of low pressure to the west gives way to a coastal low to the east. In between is the hard part of the forecast because oftentimes there's some sinking motion on the back side of that coastal low, and that dries things out.
And we still have the high up there to the
Correct.
north too. So that wants to bring in subsidence, which is sinking air, as Dan said. So watch this evolve though, because watch where the rain is going to set up. West Virginia, Virginia, D.C. We're still going to get clipped with showers into Sunday. It's not going to be
Correct.
raining the whole time. And then watch this. It sticks around.
There's
See?
nothing to kick it out.
There's nothing to kick it out. The high to the north locks it in place. I still don't think this is going to mean some heavy rain, but it means just an east wind and showers, even lingering into Tuesday.
Which could be problematic in terms of trying to get some sunshine. I don't think it'll be heavy rain, but over the course of this time, an inch of rain is possible.
Yeah. And again, we have about a 2-inch deficit for the year. We need this rain. I think it's going to set up perfectly where most of the time it will not be heavy. But I really like what the European does here.
Wow.
We're going to take you out through Wednesday. I think this is a little more realistic.
I think this is more realistic, too. This is good to see, in my opinion.
Right, because number one, there is no flooding expected.
No flooding. This is beneficial rain. I love using that word. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. We need it. We're about, as I mentioned, 2 inches under where we should be for the year. And I like the setup here. Southern, eastern spots could see 1 to 2 inches of rain.
Well, indeed.
Wouldn't surprise me if York, Lancaster, Gettysburg, Philly certainly get 1 to 2 inches of rain over the course of 4 days. Areas to the north and west, a sharp cutoff.
Yeah, and again, it may nudge a little farther north with time. We'll follow the trends.
It's like
but
a nor'easter. Like
exactly,
you said.
and it's because of these gradients, because we're sort of in between. It can either nudge north or it could stay a little bit farther south. It's something that definitely bears watching.
We are absolutely going to be watching this. Now, we do want to talk about, too, moving on from the weather, we have –
Still related to the weather.
It is, though. We've got a new podcast we're
We
promoting, and we want to talk a little bit about that because if you like sports, this is for you. Weather wagers. We're talking sports lines, sports betting, and, of course, all of the games. And this week, we talk a lot about Hurricane Ian and the potential for that to have an impact on games. Now, we also talked about there were several games postponed or moved
Indeed.
because of the forecast.
Yeah, and so the Mid-Atlantic, but specifically down through the Southeast and Florida, there's a game tonight. South Carolina moved their game against South Carolina State to be played tonight, which was a smart move. They follow the forecast.
And they can hopefully get out.
Southern Florida, did they also move?
So UCF moved, and then Florida,
UCF.
Florida Gators. They are playing. I forget who they're playing. It's I think East Carolina. Their game is now Sunday. So we talk about all of that. We talk about how we've seen these over-under lines come down too, because this is going to have an impact. A lot of these games in the Carolinas are going to be slop fests.
Yeah, and again, keep in mind that you can play through some heavy rain, that's for sure, but when it starts to be flooding in and around the area, that's when games tend to be moved. And, of course, Central Florida dealing with the worst of it now, but as the weekend goes on, some Carolina flooding's possible too.
You mentioned, too, that you saw some of the ticket prices for these games.
Dropped way down.
Yeah. If you want to sit through that, good luck. But
yeah,
we hope everybody's safe. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon. You can also view the video on YouTube if you search Weather Wagers and go to the ABC 27 YouTube page, and then we write a column every week with our
Indeed, we
thoughts.
do. It's a lot of fun. We have fun with it. And again, finding a connection
27.com.
between weather and college football. One of the programs I listen to on a consistent basis, it's on SiriusXM. It's Full Ride. They were just talking about today. It always seems like the last 5 or 6 years, unfortunately, a major hurricane affects these college towns and interrupts things. And
Well,
that's the human impact part of all this.
It is, and we can't forget about that. And also, not just college, the NFL. Tampa Bay had a home game scheduled.
Yeah,
I have
very
not
true.
heard the latest on that, but they may decide to move it out of Tampa. I don't see how they're going to be able to play that
Well,
game.
and what's the point?
Tampa,
If
Tampa
there's
did not
devastation
do well.
all around, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's flooding and seeing some of these pictures coming out of just Naples and Fort Myers,
Right.
it's you don't want to live through something like that. Trust
No,
me.
they're going to be cleaning up for months.
Indeed.
So I think they talked about maybe moving it to maybe Minneapolis. The Vikings are away. This is the Chiefs. We're supposed to go to Tampa
Correct.
Bay and play. That's Sunday night. We'll see what the NFL decides. But I think Tampa is certainly dealing with major destruction.
100%. It's very unfortunate. And again, our thoughts, our prayers are with all those folks. And
No doubt.
Unfortunately, places like Sanibel Island, the bridge is out getting
Yeah.
from the mainland to Sanibel Island. So we don't even know potentially how bad some of this damage is.
So we talk about a lot of that. We have fun. That's the podcast.
We certainly
you can
do.
search Weather Wagers. And just to wrap this up, we will say very quickly that the bottom line here, the screaming message for us, expect a windy, raw, damp weekend. It is not going to be raining the entire time. And I would say the brunt of this comes tomorrow night and early Saturday.
I think so too. So just keep in mind, everybody, it's not going to be devastating rain. It's not going to be heavy rain, but a consistent rain that adds up over time. Just something to watch, something to consider as you're trying to make your plans. Again, plan for not necessarily a washout weekend, but that damp, cool air with the wind coming through from the east.
Keep the umbrella handy. We will, of course, update the forecast as we need to. You can find us abc27.com, and we will both see you on the new news coming up in a little bit. Tune in then.